Yeah, I'm popping in a row, ayy. Smoke my shit, yeah, I'm so, ayy. I don't really give no fucks a roll, ayy. Hey y'all, what's going on? Thanks for tuning in. This is the Frame of Flower podcast. This is a high design, it's connected to high design. I'm figuring out the name. Anyway, episode number 48. We are joined by an absolute legend. I'm so hyped for this one. It's midnight right now. We're starting the interview, but shit, I would do it at 3 a.m. I do it whenever, really, because this is someone that I look up to quite a bit and just has a really crazy story. And that is Champelli or Joe Pelli. Thanks for coming on the show, brother.
Hey man, no problem. Anytime, man. It's a pleasure. Pleasure being on your show. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Absolutely, bro. Absolutely. We were just talking right before we started recording, just kind of about, because you're in LA right now. Just how like the proliferation of the LA can't, like, okay, before you go on, I just gotta say my piece too, because I was recently, like, I was down there about a month ago, and like, or a couple, like, that was like a few months ago, and I haven't, I'm 24, like, I'm still, like, I've been involved with cannabis forever, like, since I was 14, but like the legal industry, especially with like Cali, I'm still learning, especially LA. My homie took me to like these certain areas of the city where like there's a whole entire business district specifically for the cannabis industry, but like, and that being, legal or illegal, it blew my mind, like, like whether it's, so just that alone. But like, how have you seen LA kind of develop in terms of
I
cannabis?
mean, over the last few years, it's been like, it seems like a real proliferation of just brands. Brands are just really become more and more of a thing down here. I mean, it's been happening, the legal thing down here obviously for a while now, but it's just like, this is kind of like the place to kind of like forge your brand into the market, so to speak, like the final step in a way of kind of like forging your brand and really being official in the quote unquote, sort of industry in a sense. Like if you can kind of like, break your brand here into the market and stuff, it's a good look. It's not necessary, but it's just one of those things. A lot of brands are taking it is kind of a step, you know what I mean? As far as just taking it to another level, and just the amount of networking compared to other cities and stuff like that, is unparalleled for cannabis at this point right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Depending on what you're trying to do, of course, you know what I mean. But it's definitely become a big player in the industry and a factor, so to speak. To kind of kick it off here and take it to another level, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, like California by itself, I mean, it's the sixth biggest economy in the world. So just right away, and then obviously, California cannabis in general is kind of like, it's what's, people. I still stick up for my home state of Washington State, but this is what most people think of where all of the cannabis really originally kind of was supplied to the rest of the country, right? We still send packs in Washington. We used, I always used to. I was like, come on, we put up numbers too. No, I'm just kidding. Can't compare against the sixth biggest economy in the world, literally beating, it's literally next to Germany. But I do think that like you said, the networking is pretty insane. I think the infrastructure is pretty insane. I think too, one thing that I've really studied is, like, just kind of observed, I mean, is I think it's really, like, for example, a state like Washington State, it's a small market. And I think when you go to a place like LA, your chances of building a following quicker, and just because you're around more people, there's more people that can identify with your brand, and just the overall, also just the culture of cannabis in LA is, and the Bay, unmatched, dude. Like, this is like, it's like religion a little. Maybe I'm blowing out proportion, but it kind of is like, a certain,
I mean, yeah, it's so entrenched in the culture that, and obviously in a lot of places, but LA is very, I mean, counterculture in general, synonymous with, Hollywood and the music industry and the film industry. And I mean, cannabis being fashion industry, it's all kind of tied so close to all of that, so it's kind of hand in hand in a way, and yeah, it's definitely a thing.
Yeah, and those are all, and you just named all those different, those are all industries that like, you're involved with, right? In a lot of ways, right? When it's like fashion, music, maybe I don't know, a little bit of Hollywood, maybe, or, but do you think like cannabis is it's obviously one of these things that enhances all these other aspects, like it really goes well with music, right? With its creativity, or and then it goes well with, it enhances really a lot of stuff. And I digress to kind of ask the question.
Yeah, I mean, it's just to throw it in there. I was just going to say, it's like, yeah, cannabis is this common thread and conduit throughout so many aspects of our lives. You know what I mean? And maybe you don't identify with somebody on one level, but you can all agree on some good weed or whatever. You know what I mean? It's kind of like this common thread people have, almost akin music or something like that, where you can be like, it brings all these different people from all different faiths, so to speak, or or whatever, different walks of life together. And it's kind of always had a way of doing that. And I've always, that's one of the reasons, obviously just one of the reasons I gravitated towards it, and also just was able to acknowledge the power of cannabis as kind of a uniting force, even though a lot of that's kind of, people have lost sight a little bit of that and what truly the cannabis culture is about, and like where it kind of its roots come from and stuff. But it is kind of like a uniting force, and that's one of the reasons why in the past people were, governments and stuff like that were afraid of the cannabis and the culture and stuff like that, because of its properties and its powers to almost like unite in a way and bring people together, and honestly, wake people up and to stuff. And it's definitely, like I was saying, it's just a common thread. There's so many different people's cultures and cities and countries, and you name it, it's like kind of like a glue in a sense in so many different ways.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. I think you're spot on. I think it's, everyone can smoke together. It's like, having a meal in a sense. It's just a different, sustenance, I guess. But
breaks down so many barriers, you know what I mean, in so many different ways. You could be somebody, a person, you guys don't speak the same language, but you fire up somewhere and you guys, some guy. I mean, it used to be, before weed was such a commonplace thing, you'd be somewhere and fire up, and somebody would run over and want to hit the joint or whatever, you know what I mean? And you kind of make a connection that way, or something.
Make some new
like
friends real quick.
And you would in another country or wherever, I mean, I've been like all over smoking weed in the past before it was like commonplace to really be smoked. I was kind of like smoked everywhere and people would trip out. But
where are those places? Where
like,
yeah, sorry to interrupt. I do know you've been kind of all like, where were some of those places, and kind of what some of those examples, and because it seems like I saw the hyphiest picture, low key, like it's like you like 98 and like Amsterdam, like I can't remember, it was something, it was like, I gotta look it up honestly, but it was like you with two chicks, and like it was, I think it was like, I can't remember what country it was, but it was,
I think, I don't know if it was like the two chicks. I might have been in Hawaii potentially, or something like that.
I think I was somewhere. I remember like it was kind of, it was just like, it was suave as fuck, Loki. I thought it was somewhere.
Amsterdam. Yeah. I mean, I might have been. Yeah, I might have been. I'd done a. I think I know. I think I know which picture you're talking about. It was actually in Hawaii. I'd actually thrown a show with the Outcasts when they had put out their album Aquemini, and with a couple partners, and we'd done a show with the Outcasts in Hawaii, and that's like at this place called the World Cafe, I think, where that photo was taken. And if my memory serves me right, if we're talking about the same photo, but yeah.
I think I need to.
But,
I'll find.
It was interesting.
I think it was like Amsterdam, look. It was something like it was a little.
Yeah, yeah,
There's a bunch of them out there. I've been looking, so like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just it seems like you travel. You seem like a very well traveled person. So and we'll get into the. Trust me, we're about to get into the music here in a sec. I'm hyped on that. But what other places in like the around the world you've been, and like what are some unique kind of cultures when it comes to cannabis? Is there like that you've seen outside of the U.S.?
I mean, it's interesting because I mean, I haven't been to a ton of spots, as many as I'd like to. There's still got a lot of places on my list, but from an early age, I was kind of exposed to other cultures. I was actually born in Spain, so I kind of was like initially exposed to being born in another country as an experience there, and so the Spain, of course, as you well know, and people know, has like very much a cannabis culture there. Initially, it was like more hash culture than anything, but it
Morocco.
was still
Yeah.
like as a kid, my dad was still growing a few plants on his balcony, you know what I mean? Back when I was a kid, you know what I mean? So I was like just some swaggy, leafy stuff, that I tried to smoke. I mean, I actually did smoke, and it was like little small kind of plants, nothing like with crazy giant buds, but it was just some sort of sativa. Who knows where he gotten the seeds from, you know what I mean? But yeah, but Spain is turned into like another one of the kind of weed capitals of the world, really, in a sense, right behind like Amsterdam. You got Barcelona, and even some southern Spain, which kind of shares the same latitude and longitude in a sense as California. So it kind of grows like super super great over there in Spain, as
Yeah.
well. That's just
100%.
one of the places where I've grown and got to experience the cannabis culture over there.
Quick question with that, real quick. We don't have to. I don't. We don't go too. I guess too into it's really whatever you're comfortable with, I guess. But in terms of cannabis, obviously they have like the cannabis clubs there, right? Just like the I know, and I have friends that have companies there. They've opened up recent companies, and I obviously won't say specific names, but like they've told me like, or I kind of figured it out, and I was like, I asked them, and they're like, yeah, but like everyone, it's kind. I mean, there's parts of LA like this, but like everyone's paying some fees to the mob, like to the mob, or to the
Yeah,
different.
the social clubs, as they call them over there in Spain. It's kind of a gray area, and you can, if you're connected, you can buy a license and get a coffee shop, so to speak, and social club. But yeah, I mean, it's all. I mean, in a way, it's just like here in the United States, everybody's paying the mob too, so to
Exactly.
speak.
There's just a legal. Exactly. 100%.
It's the
Yeah.
government basically is who you're paying. It's like you it all kind of trickles upward, so to speak, as long as the people up above are happy, and that's what it's always kind of come down to. Now all of a sudden that they've figured out a way to tax cannabis, now all of a sudden it's okay to be all over and promoted and sold and so forth. Before it was, oh no, it's big evil weed. You know what I mean? Reefer madness. Before when they didn't really have a way to tax it. You know what I mean? Now they're kind of figuring it out. Like, oh shit, look at all this
Like
dough
what?
now.
Yeah.
Oh, it's okay now. But yeah, in so many words, that's kind of like what it comes down to. Like, so all these countries, if the government's able to figure out a way to control it and make some money off it, then then it starts to be okay, basically. And that happens in, obviously in Spain, and then a lot of it is like different, tighten it up even more. Then, they obviously start, letting out the leash a little more and making it more, finding a way to give more people licenses and make it more, socially acceptable and so forth and taxable,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I think this kind of pops in my mind is, something I talk a lot about, and I get the sense that, I mean, I think because I've been watching some of your interviews as well, but like we're in this weird time period right now where culture has been around for so long, right? And it's been developing, it's been cultivating, or however you want to say it, in the illegal side of things, right? And now the legal has come to the forefront, and it's just started its process of growing. So it's like you're trying to fit this massive thing in this small little kind of parameter, or not really parameter, but it's just there's a lot of friction, right? Like friction is really, we're gonna see a lot of people, like just like when I saw medical, like I worked in medical in high school. I was at the very end of the old school medical in Washington, and I saw like almost all my homies, my big homies, like lose their shops. Literally, we used to have a ton of different black owners of dispensaries in Seattle. Not a single one now. There's so but really we're seeing this continuous clash of like corporate with culture, and eventually there's going to be some kind of weird hybrid between the two, and probably corporate's going to be more of the dominant component to it, and it's going to use the culture to its advantage to industry plants, right, and so forth. But I guess what's your take on the movement of who's winning? I guess, I mean, corporate's going to win eventually, or like, and not to put sides on it, but there kind of is. We know who's corporate, we know who's at least the smart, the really the a lot of the really really successful brand companies are the ones, like, I love cookies and all, but cookies is one of my favorite brands, and they started within the culture and stuff. They've now kind of turned a little bit into a corporation now. Jimmy Devine, shout out to Jimmy, by the way, he really kind of made this clear. Is like there's a lot more nuance to like what we call corporate cannabis, really, because there are OGs that have like funded people with their trap money over over the generations and stuff. But I guess what's your take on
I mean,
yeah.
yeah, there's people that are coming, like you say, originally from the space, and going corporate and actually getting organized. You know what I mean? So really, it just a lot of times means being organized. In some sense, a lot of times what we say is corporate is like what we imagine is like Nabisco or whatever. Just giant corporations. A lot of the bigger players, which it's kind of like the consolidation is kind of what the government and the governing forces actually, to their benefit, they kind of want to consolidate, because right now they're dealing with so many smaller players, and they're just going to make it harder and harder, as it did just for the smaller players and smaller people and independent people, in a sense, and people maybe coming from the culture, to kind of like have a place in the space. You know what I mean? Because to them, they'd rather collect one big check from one big, a handful of big corporations. Rather
Well,
than
is that necessarily true? Is that necessarily true though?
like,
Because a lot of them don't pay taxes, right? Like the big corporate, like more
well,
so.
and that, I mean, that could be said about like, but if you look at it, that's just how, if that was
It's like
true,
the funding instead. It's like instead of the taxes, it's just the corporation giving contributions. Now it's that.
I mean, yeah, you know what I mean? It's like they don't even, it's like almost they don't even care about the taxes, in the sense they find other ways to,
Legal bribery.
If you look at it right now, it's like, there's like, if you probably narrow it down, it's like, 5-6 corporations that own, quote unquote, like, everything that's, we associate with commercial, anything here in the United States. And yeah, they probably don't pay any taxes, you know what I mean? It all goes, but yeah, I think it's going to get more and more consolidated. And that's why I really do think it's important for people to try to hold on to the culture and the vibe of like where, a lot of this stuff originated, and like the people along the way who have suffered because of it, you know what I mean? Minorities primarily were, super affected through the war on drugs. and just racism in general and just injustices in that department, you know what I mean? And so many people were just locked up and are still locked up for cannabis, something that is legal in, you know, a ton of states now. And you know, some states people are still getting life for cannabis, you know?
Yeah.
So that just right there, until we can kind of like, you know, even the playing field in that department and make sure people that, you know, have been affected by these laws have a chance to be in the space and maybe make, you know, a life and a living out of it. You know, I don't. I think there's still a lot of work to be done, so to speak. You know, it's just not. It's still not. You know, it's still not a fair playing field, and it's going to become. It's going to be tougher and tougher. It's already hard to get in and get a license and get all your, you know, stuff together. Even with like equity programs and stuff like that, it's still hard for people to you know, make that transition if they want to. You know, there's people that are doing it, but it's still tough to do it. You know what I mean? And get funding and really scale it up and make it a business that's going to actually be profitable, because now with all the taxes and everything going on, it's like the margins are so small, you know, and or smaller, you know what I mean, for a small company at least, you know, and they've kind of like the government is kind of,
They're helping the rich. They're helping the big corporations, really.
Yeah, they're helping the big corporations, making it easier, and then but they've also kind of pitted, or you know, the black market against the white market just out of necessity. So it's like they kind of need the black market to keep thriving, or the traditional market to keep thriving, in order to even keep the white market relevant. It's like one feeds the other, you know, so to speak, in a way there, and to keep the value there. It's like, it's really just kind of like a weird, it's a weird dance at this point, you know what I mean? And then, you know, our tax dollars that we're pouring in to, you know, in businesses, cannabis business, and people who are buying cannabis, a lot of those tax dollars are going into enforcement of drug laws, cracking down on people growing traditionally. And I mean, some of them obviously, you know, are going out of control, not, you know, doing blatant stuff that is like, you know, not good for the environment, or maybe doing stuff that's, you know, not in line with, you know, local laws and stuff like that. But a lot of it is like still affecting people who are just trying to make a living and make a transition away for their families. Or it's just kind of ironic that, you know, a ton of that money goes towards, you know, fighting the cannabis industry, you know, the underground industry as well, you know. So it's like, you know, these people who have probably, a lot of people who have made it from the traditional market and are now in the legal market, are still funding like the oppression of like other people in the space, you know, are still underground and just trying to pay their bills and feed their family.
Hello? We cut out? I think we froze. Okay, a little intermission here. So just had a little intermission there, a little problem with the connection. But all right, so let's go into some of let's go a little bit of the music right now, that some of the questions I had. So right off the bat, who are some of the rappers you have relationships with? Some of the musicians, really, and then also, I guess furthermore, like let's I guess, how did you get into music? And then we'll go into the relationships that you've kind of established.
Well, you know, some of my early, you know, I've just been, you know, my father was an artist, and I've always been just kind of drawn to creative stuff, and music just happens to be one of the kind of forms of expression that I was kind of drawn to. Some of my earliest memories were just like Bob Marley and stuff like that, and I grew up with like my brother's record collection and stuff, and just, you know, messing with records and scratching and making mixtapes and stuff like that throughout the 80s. So I was like kind of exposed to, you know, a lot of reggae. And then when hip hop started hitting, like a bunch of like early hip hop stuff, like the Roxanne Shante kind of battles, and, you know, just old school kind of East Coast hip hop, and then, you know, Too Short, and I used to make mixtapes and stuff like that, and scratch and stuff like that. And so I was kind of like just, you know, always just kind of exploring music at a young age, just kind of organically. And it just, you know, you can learn from just like listening to music, you know, if you really are paying attention. And I was always just like, noticed myself, just especially once I started smoking weed too, is like dissecting music and being like, oh, I really like this part, or I like that part. And I think that led to my ear for like sampling and stuff like that, and just like picking out unique sounds. And like you can like refine your ear, and you know, and like in hip hop or in any music too, it's like I'm always, you know, hip hop is very like loop driven, or very like unique sound stuff you can kind of listen to over and over again, like hot pieces, hot parts of a song where you're like, the hottest part of the song, you just take that and loop it, the intro or whatever, like you'll like pick out the hottest stuff, you know what I mean? So my ears have always been like drawn to like the best little parts of songs, you know, like dissecting stuff. So that kind of like aided me in sampling and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, I got involved early on. Like always, I mean, I took like guitar lessons when I was like a little kid, but kind of dropped those because I couldn't really pay attention. I was just too busy wanting to play in the streets, and just couldn't focus on that too much. But I mean, I must have still picked up a little. I'd always like pick up instruments when I could and just mess with them more. And you know, like a little piano, a little guitar and stuff like that, or some congas. There was always like a few little instruments around, and I never really was like, you know, classically trained in anything, but I kind of just picked stuff up on my own and just kind of learned that way. And then in the mid '90s, I kind of started you know, a record label. And then from there, I kind of just started putting out a compilation with a partner of mine. And from there, I started making connections in the music industry and networking with more musicians and artists and stuff like that, and doing projects together, and just kind of networking my way that way, you know. You know, and just always, even like there used to be a lot more shows, of course, back in the days when a lot of artists were touring and concerts were a bigger thing. And I was always like at those concerts, like just being a fan of music with the right artists, and networking with them, and trying to always had kind of like some sort of, I always knew people who were throwing the shows, being connected in San Francisco, and I'd always find my way backstage or onto the bus. So, I mean, always kind of have the best weed. And so that's always like, there goes that cross connection with the weed thing, is like the weed man's always got, you know, like kind of the end, like all the artists want the best weed. And back then it's like weed wasn't as like, you know,
the fire was scarce.
Yeah, it was more scarce. The good weed was more scarce. So it's like if you had the good weed, it was like you had like an in, you know what I mean? A friend with weed is a friend indeed, basically. So yeah, so that was just one of the another, like basically another way that I kind of bridged the gap to a lot of different artists, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, it was just happened happen that way too, you know, just having good weed and stuff.
Yeah, 100%. Well, you like you're really one of the very first people just to, like, or I guess I'm sure this has been done. I mean, this has been done for, I'm sure, generations. There's all different types of stuff, but like with weed specifically, leveraging it into opportunities, and then you start to see like then you start to see, well, and then you obviously I mean, some of the videos you have all these just in, I have the list here of just insane names, right? Like just the, you know, like legends, right? But like then you're like, and we'll go to that list of legends too. I want to definitely hear it in a sec. But then you start to see kind of proliferations of like, then you start to see like, you know, other people leverage music and cannabis and other things. Like I personally, like I'll be frank with you, like you know, I was a trapper when I was younger. If you were to ask me if I was gonna be on YouTube 3 years ago, 4 years, like I would have laughed at you. But I realize, you know, I'm leveraging the media, right? Like, you know, there's different leverage points, and like, yeah, you know, I think that, you know, like, yeah, I think that I think weed's a really good tool. Like, you know, it's been a great tool for that.
I mean, you know, it's like, just to say, like, yeah, I'd say just to play off of that a little bit, you know, weed is honestly, it's a tool, and honestly, it has some magic to it. You know what I mean? As far as just manifesting in your life in different ways. You know what I mean? I found like weed throughout the ages is always, you know, kind of being like a rebel. I've always kind of been a rebel and kind of on the other side of things as far as like society goes, and wanting things to kind of do things my own way and make my own way and be kind of a maverick and a, you know, an entrepreneur and just kind of make my own way. And weed was kind of a way to do that. You know what I mean? And it has been for years for a lot of people, as far as like it would allow you to like, you know, make a way for yourself and still have time for maybe other creative things. Whereas if you had a full-time job, you wouldn't have time to maybe be creative or, you know, stuff like that. So it's like, you know, cannabis is a way, definitely has provided and, you know, been a tool for manifestation and stuff like that throughout my life for years. You know what I mean? So it's amazing because you can start from seed, basically from nothing, and create something, you know what I mean? And it's a blessing, you know what I mean, to be able to do that and to have a plant that's so giving, you know what I mean? And so that's why I got a lot of respect for it and a lot of love for the culture and the weed itself and the medicine, essentially, you know what I mean? And it's always been a provider and a tool for good, you know what I mean, as far as I'm concerned. Obviously, you know, some of that gets lost now. A lot of it is just so commodified now, you know, that it's
Everything's
just like,
commodified nowadays, dude. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like it's like we're
yeah,
you know, everything like to a kind of insane degree. I think capitalism a little bit run amok, but
yeah,
yeah. Um,
yeah, it kind of, you know, the message gets lost a little bit, you know what I mean? And the importance of, you know, like I think a lot of the magic and the message is kind of getting lost just because it's all everybody. It's a big money grab now in a sense, which is okay for people to be making money and stuff off of it. That's also part of it, but also at the same time, you know, you gotta, you know, pay your due respect. I feel like to the nature and plant and respect it, and then, you know, make sure to use it for good also, and you know, use it as kind of to spread the gospel in a sense. And, you know, it's always been used in the counterculture for change and awakening and revolution in a sense, you know, in different forms. And just, you know, so I just believe it's good to just find ways to educate, you know, people and keep that side of it alive, and all the different other things hemp and, you know, cannabis could do to help change the world and society for the better if it's used the right way, you know, and, you know, used smart as far as, you know, obviously, you know, all the different plastics and fuels and foods and all these
I
different
mean,
things.
Henry Ford, right? That always blows my
Yeah,
mind, right? Like that
yeah,
one, the whole
exactly.
car was like 90% of it was supposed to be hemp, like literally not like from the fuel to everything, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
um, which always blows my mind. Yeah, no, absolutely.
That
And
was 100 years ago, right? You know,
yeah,
that's pretty
dude.
amazing, you know.
I know it's like we took some step back, took some few steps
Well,
back. Yeah,
yeah, you know, in
in some ways.
you know, I mean, countries have a way of doing that and governments have a way of doing that. Like there's stuff in the 70s that would blow your mind that have just gotten buried, you know what I mean? And they just disappear real quick because it's maybe not beneficial to, or it doesn't make for the right people or whatever. And there's a lot of things like that. So, you know, and it's amazing how quickly people forget the past and innovations. You know what I mean? I see a lot of innovations and things like that that go unnoticed or forgotten. And there's still a lot to be learned from the past and stuff like that. And make sure, you know, a lot of these things get washed over, basically, you know what I mean? And it's important for us to like keep the knowledge alive and stuff like that. And, you know, so anyway.
Absolutely, dude. So like I initially started this YouTube channel, really because I want to help small business, you know, can't like aspiring cannabis entrepreneurs like myself, you know, just kind of get conversations going. I started out, you know, I'm more on the marketing. I can't come from that side, you know, marketing side really. But it's now kind of also I've really realized through kind of the storytelling is I think it's also in like, the Trap Tree series, that I do, but it's different, legal, dealers and their story. That's to preserve, the sacrifices and the timing, because it's like you think about it, our kids, it's gonna be like alcohol for us, but even probably less. You know what I mean? Like they're not gonna realize like, bro, people died by this. People getting their heads blown off for for this, this or that, or just the sacrifice in general, and just how there was a lot of, there was a lot that had to be, sacrificed by a
Yeah,
large group of people.
I feel like, everybody's everybody's lives, everybody's life matters and everybody's story matters. You know what I mean? Throughout the ages. And the way I look at it is like everybody's had, for example, in this, culture and industry, it's like everybody's, if you're involved in cannabis in some way, you basically have a hand in building the culture and making, and steering it, making it direction, taking it in a certain direction or evolving it, and that could be said with anything that people are involved with in life. But if you go back through the ages, I like to point to the past. Cannabis has been used for thousands and thousands of years in different ways through different cultures. More recently, think African Americans, in the jazz, in the 1920s when, jazz was popping, there was all these different names for cannabis. It was in songs. It was, there was certain people that had it. It was like marketed in a way back then. So I like to point to them, as be like, I'm, on the shoulder of giants, basically just finding my way. And, it's just, it goes back to so many people, even just early, I look up to all types. So when I grew up, I was I kind of grew up in a, almost in a way like old world still, not to totally date myself, but I was still in touch and around like all types of OG smugglers when I was growing up and stuff like that. And like all those stories and stuff like that is kind of like what I looked up to and was like, damn, this is a trip. All these people like bringing stuff from the Middle East or bringing stuff from South America and Central America or from Asia. And like all these crazy stories that I kind of grew up hearing and looked up to these guys, people like Howard Marks, Mr. Nice, and then just people in my own family circle and stuff like that. So, and even like going back to like, my great grandfather was like a gun and rum runner from like Cuba. Like used to run guns to
Blockade
Cuba.
runner. My great grandpa was one too. He's a blockade runner.
Yeah.
In the Civil War, but
yeah. So it's interesting.
Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah. So there's different kind of like history, just importance of people's stories and history, and and just being sensitive to that, and just all walks of life and facets of life in general. Like everybody's interesting. Like all these old people that nobody pays attention to anymore all have a really interesting story and amazing history and lives, and you know what I mean. And I just implore people, if you got time to talk to some old people, whenever I have interaction with old people, it's just like, man, it's really interesting to try to talk to them and learn from them and stuff. And and a lot of them get forgotten in the hustle and bustle of the this modern society and stuff, but they're the ones that hold the keys, you know what I mean, to a lot of stuff. And that even goes back to like just that sort of knowledge, and even deep on a deeper level, just indigenous people who have like real knowledge of how to live in accordance with nature and live like the original ways, which is kind of being, basically being washed over now.
It was destroyed, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's being destroyed and being erased, and there's a reason why it's being destroyed and erased. I mean, this is like the true way of living. You know what I mean? Respecting and living in accordance with nature, and I mean, it's been years and years that civilizations and societies have been trying to destroy that way of life and all that ancient knowledge.
Yeah.
So yeah, keeping stories alive, keeping that awareness alive, respecting the culture and the elders, and you know what I mean, and just
we gotta understand history is
history is yeah, that's very important. History is repeats something so much lies within there, and and I noticed now more and more everybody's kind of forgetting, and
Well, it's the revisionist. It's like some people have certain, agendas maybe, or it just happens to get revived. Like that's why, everyone, I think having this all archived, that's luckily, this is bad and good, but the internet age, right? I mean, shit, I literally got a Facebook when I was sixth grade, or eighth grade, no, seventh, like sixth, seventh grade. Like there's like, I'm like, my kids are gonna see like, it's good and bad in a sense, but like, no, I think for the most part it's good as long as we don't try to, ignore certain parts, or, we have to really understand it all. And, if there's missing data to that, or there's missing pieces to that, which I mean, if you like, looking back on some of the, shit that I was taught in school, history wise, like y'all miss some pretty big parts. Especially with American history, you missed out a lot of parts where our government literally, has been destroying the world. But, yeah, 100%, 100%. And yeah, dude, I think that's a really wise thing of you to say, and I think you're definitely spot on with that.
And I feel more and more people are like, with everything that's happening, I still feel like there is like, there has been like a big like awakening happening and stuff like that too, though, in general. Like a lot of people are, becoming more aware, and just kind of like the universal kind of connection in general with everybody and all of us as humans. Like, I mean, people are like, evolving at like a different pace. Like even if you have kids, which I don't, but I see people's kids like are super advanced now. You know what I mean? Like it'll be some little kid and they'll tell me like what they're doing, or I'll see them and they'll talk to you and you'll be like, damn, I don't know if I was like that as a kid, or, you don't really, I mean, some of these kids now are just so super hyper advanced and stuff. You know what I mean?
There's consequences to that too, right?
There is for sure, definitely.
But overall, I think it's a benefit and stuff.
Yeah,
but, 100%. Yeah.
Is out there now.
Yeah, you cut out there at the very end. I think
you're saying more information is out there, like you say, with the website, and more connectivity in a sense. So in one way, we are more connected, and there's more information kind of going around, and more awareness about issues and stuff.
100%, I definitely agree. So I want to get back into the music. So let's go into some of the relationships, really, because there's a video of E40 literally, like what was it? He got the what haircut? Like he's got the
that was like, I hadn't seen 40 for like a bunch of years, you know what I mean? And then I mean, I used to have long hair and braids and shit, and it was always had long hair and stuff. And when he saw me, I was super like clean cut, had like basically like the kind of like your hair doing.
The clean cut. Yeah.
Oh, you got the good boy haircut. Yeah, but 40's the guy, man. He's a real logo and icon, and somebody, as I was growing up in the Bay Area, learned a lot from and admired, as far as like, he's somebody I looked up to, you know what I mean, and learned from, in a sense. One of my, teachers, in a sense, through his music and just his example and everything. And he's a super smart and deep dude there, that's, built himself an empire, has all types of businesses going on, and is super entrepreneurial and just super sharp guy, you know what I mean? And super cool, humble guy.
Yeah. I think
much respect to E40.
Yeah, I think E40, like, first of all, just we got to do it. Ooh, I can't even do it right. I messed that up. But but he's I think he's a great example. Like, he's obviously a pinnacle. He's like a major figure in the Bay Area and Bay Area music. But he's like a great example of someone, and like that in terms of representing the Bay, where he's literally tell me another rap right now that's got his flow, that's ever had his flow. He's unique, dude. Unique as hell. And he's made it work. He's just made this like amazing, like really, like, tell me another rapper. Like, I don't really think there's like anybody has his kind of flow. Now there's like the new kind of modern Bay Area like flow that's kind of like everyone's stolen the They're like like anyway, but like that's a great example of E40 and like the Bay Area in general. Is there's so much kind of creativity and uniqueness, I think, and then that's the whole idea is like people come to the Bay Area, see all that, take it back home and steal it, right? But like I think E40 is definitely just with his music, I think he's a great example of that. Is there what do you think makes just the creativity? Like, what do you make? Like, what do you kind of? Why do you think that the mute like a lot of the rap specifically too is so unique? I guess.
I mean, Bay Area game, it can't be duplicated. He's always been an innovator. And I mean, since, the Click and since, Federal, which was one of his first albums, that I was kind of really listening to. He's just always been on some push, linguistically, some may call it ebonics or whatever you want to call it. But he's always been pushing the buck as far as like innovating language and lingo and slangage. And, the Bay Area has always been a big hub of that. And that's from, him and just the streets. Bay Area is very unique, you know what I mean, in that sense. To try to really pinpoint it, it's hard. It's a lot of different, obviously, African American culture there in the Bay Area. There's so many people came from different places in the 30s and 40s and 50s, from the South, and brought so much different, language from the South and different stuff there. It's got so many different influences. It's such a rich place, you know what I mean? And so many creative people that have come out of the Bay Area and have affected the world, in so many different ways, I'd say. Whether it's at this point technology, even film, fashion, music, you name it, like so many, even sports, like, the Bay Area, and then weed, of course. So it's like everything, the Bay Area is kind of like excelled and driven the culture in so many different ways, and been like, kind of like trend-setting, very much a trend-setting sort of spot. You know what I mean? It's definitely, and it's bred trendsetters and bred entrepreneurs and like independent thinkers and independent, hustlers and people who want to have start their own business and do their own thing. And I mean, it's like, I have to like attribute a ton of my game to the Bay Area just because it's like, I do music, I do clothing, I breed strains. I do, I do video, I do photography. I'm just kind of like a jack of all trades in a sense. And always, like even with my music stuff, always kind of kept it independent. And part of that is also like from a music perspective, like there hasn't ever been a ton of industry, so to speak, in San Francisco or in the Bay Area. Like all the industry kind of moved to LA. At one point, there used to be a little Hollywood in, the Bay Area and San Francisco and stuff like that. Or there used to be more, when there was more money in the music, there used to be more labels and more record deals and stuff coming out of the Bay. And there actually used to be more clothing industry up there as well. But it all kind of shifted to LA for the most part, as far as film, as far as music. And so it kind of created a vacuum, and all that opportunity as an outlet for Bay Area people kind of disappeared. So the Bay Area people kind of had to take it upon themselves to like do it their own way. You know what I mean? And that's what kind of forged people like E40 and all these other kind of entrepreneurs and different people who just kind of took it upon themselves to create their own lane and innovate their own things and kind of like chisel out their own, empires and take it into their own hands. So that's why it's always very independent and very innovative. And I think that has a lot to do with it there. There was no, big industry kind of nursing stuff there in a way. So people really had to get down in the dirt. And that's why you got a lot of creativity there too. People just, struggling to make it and create some sort of thing for themselves.
Yeah. Can I say something? That was the best I think you're spot on with that, dude. I think that no, because literally I think you're spot that's it's pretty brilliant. Because like, well, if you look at like the music industry, or you look at all industry, whenever you see corporations get involved with it, like for example, we see radio back when it first comes in, right? Corporations slowly seep in, they realize the potential. Radio sucks. Okay, now we're going to the streaming platforms. Corporations get into that, starts to suck. It gets payola, right? Like corporations destroy creativity.
Even goes back to, yeah, so it's like some of it's like that subsidized sort of thing. It's like getting a welfare check and not wanting to change anything because you got it made and you're just getting a check, so to speak, using that as an example. Like, but it's like George Lucas, like he had to find a way to finance, Star Wars and all these movies. When he, first starting off, he didn't have Hollywood there, and he wanted to keep it in the Bay Area. You got Steven Spielberg, you got George Lucas, and a host of other independent film people. You know what I mean? And,
entrepreneurs, like you're saying.
And I mean, even coming up in the '90s, like I was around, when I was just still in the streets, kind of just hustling, doing the weed thing. Like I was surrounded by all these different people doing independent clothing things and independent skate companies. And this is like in the very early '90s. And, I was adjacent to that. And I started my first kind of clothing idea in about '93 or something, I'd say. I kind of started a little small kind of company around all these other different brands that were kind of doing their thing. And that was me just soaking up the clothing game back then and always kind of being kind of, fashion orientated and kind of, so it's kind of interesting, just kind of all these little different industries there that kind of work, independently and on their own.
I think that was a really good expert, like, because that clicked for me, dude. Because I think you're right. I think the entrepreneur, like the hustler, the individual, you're not, you have to make it on your own. So you're gonna just inherently, you're not gonna follow a path that's already been designated. There's no incentive structures built there by entities like corporations necessarily. That's a really, I think you hit that on the head, dude. Because
yeah, and I mean that can be said for a lot of places that don't have the resources of and stuff like that. It's going to breed a certain type of person that if they're really about it, you have to be very just driven and focused on whatever you're trying to go for, and you have your mind made up, and create your own lane.
100%. And we got it. So when we talked on the phone the other day, I kind of said, or I told I kind of see it like Seattle in a sense is like kind of a miniature version of the Bay in some ways, in a lot of ways, in my opinion. The geography in a lot of ways very weirdly similar. Not exactly, yeah, pretty similar, but just like there's a lot less people. So it's, trust me, like I think Seattle's up next for like in the next 15-20 years. But like the Jacka and all the other a lot of the rappers, they come up to Seattle, and there was connections there as well. But and that I think kind of like with slang, right? Like I think we share. I'd be interested. Like I'm pretty sure the Bay and Seattle, they definitely share a ton of slang.
So it's a West Coast thing. So there's the extension of the West Coast there, and it's like music and like you say, and also even geographically being there, kind of a port city in a sense.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and that kind of leads me into like, like I was telling you on the phone the other day, like when I went to high school, the pop and music at the time, they were kind of like force fed, was like trap music, like Gucci, Flocka, the Chief Keef era, like that was kind of the beginning, like of my high school kind of. So we were kind of force fed that. But what was always prevalent there was, God, right? Like Mac Dre, right? Like Mac Dre, a lot of Bay Area figures, and that's where I think that it comes from a multitude of different things. The Jacka was up in Seattle quite a bit. But let's get into Mac Dre though, dude. Like what's your relationship with Mac Dre? How did you get to, like, you obviously spent a decent amount of time with him in the past, and
Yeah, you know, Mac Dre, man, rest in peace. Mac Dre was you know, a unique person, a unique soul. You know what I mean? In this world, just a real spark of light. Just another, you know, another person who was a game changer. You know, every now and then you get these people who come along in history and life and everything, and just have a certain spark for them that's, you know, spark to them that's different than everybody else. And you know, he was one of those people. And when I first met him, and you know, and even before I had been listening to his music, you know, California Living and all his different original albums that he was making outside of the jail over the telephone line. And I mean, I just grew up listening to that stuff, you know, before I even met him. So to actually meet him and be able to do music together and stuff like that, this is I had met him through Mac Mall, and it's interesting. That's the homie Mac Mall. Shout out to Mac Mall. Shout out to the Crest Side, Doobie, aka Sugar Wolf, and of course, yeah, Mac Dre. So yeah, man, it was just a blessing to be around the guy. You know what I mean? He's just real funny ass dude. Always had some funny shit going on. Super fly, super innovator. You know, super ahead of his time with everything the way he thought. And I mean, if given the chance to still be here, man, it's like you know, the world would be a different place, and the music would be a different place for sure, if he would have had some more years to continue on with what he was building and doing there. So he was gone way too soon. Actually, when he passed away, I was actually out of the country, and we were actually still in contact. I was like, I was actually in Europe, and I was producing some stuff for him when actually I got the news that he had passed away. But yeah, you know, I first did my first music with him there for a compilation that me and my partner were putting together when he first got out of jail, the first time he got out of jail. And he hit the studio. And yeah, it was, after that, it was on from there as far as like just rocking together and being cool. You know what I mean? It was always super, a ton of love. And even after I left the country in 2001, he, I mean, he kept my alive, and you know, my name popping in his music and stuff like that, you know, up until the day he died, in a sense. You know, and I keep discovering songs where he's talking about Champelli and champagne, and you know what I mean? I always, my debt of gratitude to him and his family, and you know what I mean? Always, and that's, I feel like, to a lot of people that came, that would touch my life and stuff like that. There's a lot of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing today and pushing on and giving me the strength to kind of carry on. It's like, man, people that aren't here in your life anymore, you know, I feel like you owe them to like continue on and make them proud and do something that's bigger than you. You know what I mean? And stuff that they would want to see you keep doing, and to keep doing themselves even, you know what I mean? And so I really, you know, want to keep people's names like that alive. I lost a lot of friends in this life, you know what I mean? Music and family and just other, you know, different other relations, but also just a lot of senseless death and senseless violence. You know, people that you know, should still be here with us today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, whether it's health stuff or just, you know, a lot of it is just the senseless death stuff is, you know, I can see if health or you know, nature takes you out, then that's one thing. But, you know, just for your life to get cut short because of gun violence or something like that is really a shame.
Yeah.
Something you have so much promise and so much future, you know, ahead of them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've had a good number of, you know, different people I've known slash, you know, some close friends have been, you know, murdered and stuff. And you know, it's sad. It's yeah, it's you know, it definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I just actually did rest in peace Gonzo, who was actually living up in Seattle.
I saw that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was my good friend for over 20 years right there, and we did a ton of music together. And it was like, you know, damn near like one of my best friends there for years, and he'd moved up there kind of almost to get away from the bullshit, and you know ended up catching up with him and following him up there, you know. So you know it's kind of a shame, but yeah, more senseless kind of violence and stuff. You know?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, your loss, by the way, too. Yeah. You know, kind of going back to a little bit with Mac Dre, you know, I do want to like, I think that, you know, people like yourself have kind of kept, you know, him alive in this, but the music too is like, you know, like Honor Nicotine is my brother, you know, Honor Nicotine is my brother's favorite rapper. You know, he's been, you know, putting me on him for forever. And it's like the whole thing. My homie's a rapper up here. He's like, you know, Andre Nicotina taught me how to smoke. Mac Dre, you know, taught me how to pimp. Like, you know, but like that, like his music in general, like the fact that, you know, we're bumping, you know, and not say they're like massive. I mean, they're definitely a difference, but like the fact that we're bumping like, you know, some Gucci, you know, back, you know, some Young Scooter, some Future, and then some, you know, since 84, you know, like, you know, it just, I think it's a testament to his music. And like, you know, you hear people like Drake like talk about Drake being like, you know, like he says Mac Dre's influence on him, you know, when it comes to, and you know, it's
Yeah, he's you know he's an iconic figure in the culture, and he made timeless music. You know what I mean? That we're able to you know cross over and touch a whole lot of people. You know, and not too many artists can do that and relate to you know to so many different people, and you know have their legacy live on like that and stuff. And Dre was definitely one of those people. You know what I mean? And has a big influence on the culture, and definitely left his mark. You know what I mean? For sure. And that's one thing he'll always live on through his music and that legacy that he left us. You know what I mean?
100%. I'm
So
gonna be showing my kids Mac Dre, you know, like
I'll live Mac Dre. You know what I mean?
yeah, absolutely. This is what it is. Yeah.
is what it is.
Yeah. Shit, dude. It's crazy, bro.
Uh,
I like that's like, and that's like that was such a big part of like I was just at my homie's you know, birthday dinner. I grew up kind of this, you know, central district. I went to a school that was, you know, I think it was like predominantly black, right? 50-60%. But like I was, you know, I went to just a really diverse school, but like, you know, I'm talking all raised, like we were all bumping Mac Dre, like everyone, like all, and like my homie's dinner, and I was telling him, I was like, yo, like, you know, like, yeah, like she only seen me with Champelli treat. Like he was like, what? And like I've been telling all my homies that, because it's like, you know how many times, bro, we've been in like house parties, bro, like singing along, like it's like she never like, and I've like said that line, and then it's just, you know, that's like another, like that's like one of the big things. I was so excited for this interview, like just that kind of like,
that's one of those things. Mac Dre is kind of like he's kind of like weed. You know what I mean? In a sense, he out here in the Bay Area, you know, it'll be like a party, a day party or a night party or somewhere in the club. And it's like everybody's going to turn up. It's kind of like this unifying force everybody can come together on. It'll be blacks, Asians, Samoans, whites, Chinese, Mexicans, Latins. I mean, you name it, everybody's going to start gigging and, you know, dancing and going off. You know what I mean?
literally,
You
dude.
know,
Every here's the
comes
100%.
as soon as that shit kicks in, it's about to go up, you know.
100%. When you hear there's a few quintessential like beats from like from Dre where you hear they go, oh shit, just yeah, I know exactly what you mean by that.
Yeah.
No, that's yeah, dude. Yeah, that's like literally one of my, you know, Mac Dre. I've, you know, definitely one of my favorite rappers of all time for sure. And
Oh yeah.
we're just like a weirdly big part of like what we listen to. And I now that I'm like reflecting back on it and thinking about that, like, bro, we were bumping Chief Keef, like Hate Me and so like, and not to say like there was like, but that lasted that long, and I, you know, it's telling, and like I carry like, you know, I care like, you know, deeply about like Mac J, like the music, and you know, obviously, and then, you know, on Nicotina as well. But like, I'm curious. what's your kind of take on like, you know, like first of all, like one of the classic albums of all time, Andre and Andre, right? Like these kind of
Mhm.
two opposite, like they're kind of opposites in some way. They're so unique, both flows and
Yeah, yeah,
stuff, and you know,
yeah.
um,
That's an amazing album right there for sure. Yeah, two unique, very unique characters and unique flows, and you know what I mean, for sure. It's super dope that they had a chance to get together and make that music. You know.
yeah, 100%, 100%. So want to go. So some of the names that I saw that were listed. So E40, Memphis Bleak, Benny
Yeah, Memphis
Siegel.
Bleak, that's the homie. Shout out to Memphis Bleak, you know, and in the warehouse music group and Rock Nation, Rockefeller Records, and everything. Those
Let me
guys, you
ask
know,
you this, dude.
over the
Let me
years.
ask you this. Do you think that Jay-Z mishandled Memphis Bleak or
You know, I mean, that's a good question right there. In my opinion, you know what I mean? Memphis was kind of like one of these underdog rappers. Like I feel like given more push and more attention. You know what I mean? You know, he's a laid back dude that's super humble at the same time. But
that's
at
like
the
the whole
same
saying in the music industry, right? That like that's what I remember. I've heard, right? That
yeah, you know, I mean, yeah, I feel like he could have got a bigger push and done a lot more numbers and been a bigger artist than he was. You know what I mean? And he did. He did a lot of stuff and it was huge as it is. But I feel like, yeah, to me at least, I felt like he could have been bigger. You know what I mean? As far as like he could have got more, he deserved a bigger push. You know what I mean? And
oh
you
yeah.
know that's always tough. Is like you know, sometimes as a label, you know, people don't make the best, you know, decisions. If you got like somebody who's like a Jay-Z, like the focus is going to be on Jay-Z mainly. You know
The
what I mean?
OVO sweatshop, you heard about that, right? Like, well, you know, like the whole, it's pretty much the design is like the entire like label is just it's a pyramid, right? And it's all built up, you know, like why is Party Next Door not a superstar? Like, you know, like all these
Yeah.
other, you know,
It's the danger of being, you know, under somebody who's larger than life and is already an icon. It's like there's no real interest in, you know, them. This could go for anything, and it's maybe not even a personal thing, but it's just a business strategy, and it's like they have to push their main guy who's working to the forefront. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And as much as Jay fucks with Bleak and vice versa, and as big as I think Bleak could have been, and bigger than you know, bigger than ever than a lot of these artists out here. Like it's just like one of those things, the way the cookie crumbles, you know what I mean? Like you say, like Drake and other situations. I mean, it could be even said for, you know, Mac Dre and other artists in his camp or whatever, you know. So it's like
Was that
whoever.
the case? I'm curious. Like, I just don't even know. Like, I don't know. Was that
Yeah,
his
I mean,
thing?
you know, I mean, Trey was, you know, he was really excelled. I mean, there's other dope artists in the camp, you know, I mean, as far as like that goes. But I'm just saying, like, you got your
Personality
star,
was so big. It was such a big, like, you know.
yeah, you got your star player, you're going to pass him the ball, you know what I mean, and make sure they run it all the way as far as they can before you start focusing on anybody else too, in a way, you know. So that's kind of like you're not going to take the spotlight off of your star player if he's, you know, putting up numbers. Kobe's going to, you know, run up the numbers or whatever it is, you know what I mean? So yeah, you know, it's just kind of like, you know, it's kind of sometimes it can be unfortunate and for the artists and stuff like that that end up falling kind of to the wayside, don't get the proper shine that maybe they could have deserved, but they play their part in, you know, they play their part in history and also supporting the other artists is just like an overall look and, you know, and just in general. And, you know, they eat and have a good time and are along for the ride, so to speak. But,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
you know,
I think it kind of, you know, which kind of pops into my mind is it a little bit like, you know, now it's not a bad thing whatsoever if you're, you know, you're not the lead, like you're part of the, you know, helping that person.
supporting cast member,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
not a bad thing. Like that's not no bad, but like it also kind of goes back to like, you know, the whole idea we're talking about with like when there's a corporate infrastructure that or like there's a structure there like
yeah,
that you're now being interjected into. You can't create your own structure. like you were saying, like maybe Memphis Bleak should have gone in, been, not so close, to Jay, where, so it's kind of that risk and reward, I guess, of, taking that chance. And yeah, there's unfortunate situations that, just.
And I'm still pushing Bleak to try to come out with an album right now. I still believe he could come out and do his thing. You know what I mean? And he's like, nah, he's focused on his own label. The Wash House. Warehouse Music Group, and you know what I mean. And he's focused on that, and he's got a whole roster of artists over there. So everybody keep their eye out for Warehouse Music Group and all their stuff up and coming. So even just focused on other artists and stuff like that. But yeah, I still believe him as an artist, and he's super dope lyrically and stuff like that. He's sitting on tons of songs that he just doesn't even release. You know what I mean? But
well, you see people like, you see like groups like Griselda, like there's a resurgence, like a modern version of like the lyricist that's been,
I know he's super lyricist. You know what I mean? Just saying, like Beanie Siegel, or a lot of these guys still could really make another push in my eyes. You know what I mean?
Especially nowadays, like I studied music business just because I'm just fascinated in it, and I just always have. But I personally, like, I think, like, it's like I would definitely be independent. I think there's definitely benefits to it, but like I think I have the diligence to work hard enough to build up the catalog to then leverage into a small distribution deal, get all the, it's like you want to build the fire and then have the record label use them for like a couple of years, have them pour the gasoline on to get you the stuff that you couldn't get, and then you're leaving, like, but just, and I'm learning this through the internet, like this is like through, shout out to like, people like Russ and I think I was talking to, I was in LA, was shooting a show, like Redman was staying in our this like huge Airbnb that we're staying in. He took my room, actually. I got low key, I didn't wash my dish, and like Redman got on my back about it. It was actually hilarious. But it like actually just kills me. But where was I going with that? God damn it. Oh no, did I just lose my train of thought? No.
Just Redman, Airbnb, you know what I mean? Just being independent and taking that lane. You know what I mean? I think there's something to be said about taking that independent route, or like letting the labels kind of build you up. And more so now, it's like the music industry is tough right now, as far as like there isn't a lot of label support, and you're not going to get the same label support is like old artists used to get, with $1 million.
Not getting the $13 million budgets, right?
Yeah, all that is gone now. So now it's like it is like a prove yourself sort of get out there and forge your own wave, and it really does force. Once you maybe get like a bunch of millions of views and followers and stuff like that, now a label will come and check for you and try to get you and sign you. But a lot of artists are like, shit, I built this all the way. I got to crack it. If you get that far, it's like, what do I need a label for? You know what I mean? Unless they're really trying to bread you out. So it's like, at that point, it's like in the past, like obviously it was beneficial and they would build up artists. But now it's like a label, they're not really spending the money to build an artist out of nothing anymore. Barely, you know what I mean? They're just not even. It's
they're doing high volume. They're doing high volume.
Yeah, they're gonna let you do your thing, and once they see you got a wave, then they'll come and fuck with you with that.
Like they'll invest in a bunch of different artists. They'll throw little amounts in it like that, and then
they can do little small things. If you take get you a couple videos and put your album out, now it don't cost anything like it used to put somebody out and give them like a little push. It's all just on the internet. Before it was like, you
had distribution fees, right? The distribution, like if you press a button, like
so much money and stuff, and wasted money also, and just inflated costs went into like pushing artists and stuff like that in the past.
No, 100%. And I also just remembered too, like I was when M80, he's like I think the former manager of like Wu-Tang or whatever.
Yeah,
I brought up Russ, and he was like, "Oh, the one who really did it right was Macklemore." And Macklemore, he like in terms like that dude made a killing. Like he got that whole Grammy 9 months, like that was all independent, like pretty much. So you can make a ton of money if you can really. But I remember, like I'd seen Macklemore, all the time, for years and years and years, all across Seattle, doing little small performances. Like, it's like, oh, there's Macklemore, you know what I mean? And then, he put in 10, 15 years and it all, eventually, it all culminated. And then he had all this leverage to, in my opinion, when you're dealing with corporations, especially as a creator, you have to use them or they will absolutely use you. And these, these record labels, like the 360 deals, these like, these contracts that some of these people are like these kids are signing, it's predatory. It's been, I mean, a lot of the time, like the history of like the music industry is the history of being kind of predatory in a sense, right? Like you could make that argument.
Man, I mean, yeah, it goes. I mean, some of these contracts go. It's like, some of these contracts are no joke. It basically, equals slavery in so many words, damn near. Some of them are like equate with, you know what I mean? So
masters, right? Like, oh, I own your masters. What?
Yeah, so I mean, throughout time, it's been pretty ugly, and you really got to be on your business and be on your shit. And a lot of music, a lot of success for artists, depends on really. You got to be a businessman too, and really know all your business side of the music stuff. Just being an artist alone nowadays isn't enough to like secure your success. You know what I mean? You got to be smart and savvy business wise too to really get, or have some people around you that are really in your corner who are going to really hold you down and make sure your shit's on point. If not, you're not going to really stand a chance. Because especially nowadays, it's like you're counting like micro pennies you got to add up now through streaming, and it's like, left and right, they're just devaluing music. So it's up to you to really be on top of and diligent about like all your just micromanaging all your little streaming revenues and licensing things and like all that. More and more, you have to be super on top of that if you really want to make any money. And especially now, it's like, since there's not a lot of concerts and shows, like that's where it's at, is like licensing things. And,
100%.
But it's like shows like Macklemore, he was able to like build up, hit the college circuit, do a ton of different shows, and start building up and doing more major shows. Like that's like, touring is like, in merchandise and stuff like that used to be like one of the mainstays and one of the ways that artists would actually be able to truly make a living outside of like the record sales,
Yeah.
And like now that's taken a pretty big hit. Like, the music industry honestly is in a really super hurt position right now. It'd be interesting to see, I mean, it's
the artists are, I'd say, in a sense, right? Like more because after they figured out after the record labels figured out like how to make money from it, because they were hemorrhaging money after like Napster and stuff, and like they didn't know how to deal with it, and then they finally, the record labels are making, like Universal, like the big three they're making billions now. Like the artists a lot of them are going broke, and I think an adaptation of that, and I've kind of heard this from people that have said this, is that like if you can't nowadays, you cannot be like, hey, I'm gonna like forever be able to be a musician and make money off it. It's sad to say that, but it's like you need to, it's really use the platform to then leverage yourself into other, whereas I leverage media, you leverage cannabis, or you leverage, like we leverage art, or that it's like you're leveraging your platform, your following, your influence to then get into business endeavors. Like you look at all the richest, rappers, right? It's not from their music, like
you gotta have 10 different. Nowadays you gotta have 10 different gigs going on. Basically, I mean, even when I it started, my record label in the mid 90s or whatever. We built it up and had a few releases and stuff like that. But that's like right when the music industry crashed, basically 99, 2000, and Tower Records and all these different distributors, and Napster was online, came online, and even there was like a big transition in music in general. Like everything went to digital, like Pro Tools, and 2-inch tape, analog tape was like when it was started to go obsolete. Like I just bought a 2-inch tape machine for 20 G's.
Damn,
And
that's
like
crazy.
now it was like Pro Tools, you know what I mean?
Next year, oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, like Pro Tools. So then it's like I had this 2-inch tape machine, which I'd done a lot of my music that I did originally was all on 2 inches, but
What is 2 inches? I don't even know what that like really means.
2 inches, it's like a 2-inch like reel to reel.
Okay.
So reel to reel tape, basically.
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. Okay.
Multi-track, like you had a bunch of tracks on 24 track.
Oh yeah. Okay, I know you're talking about. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, so that's what it used to be basically, and but they made that transition over to Pro Tools, and and I was like, I kind of made the transition early on to Pro Tools and was doing that, but it was like in that window there, like all these things happened, Napster, digital, all this different stuff. So like the digital like allowed people to actually have a studio in their home and started to independent size basically the musician, you know what I mean? More people could afford to actually have a Digio One or whatever in their house and like record their own music, and music studios started to like, I mean, it took some years. I mean, they still exist, but it definitely affected that side of the music industry as well, as far as
yeah, absolutely. A little bit of a shift of power.
I mean, I had released a project and Tower Records went bankrupt and we lost like a ton of money. They were like a big, a big portal for like reaching the consumer and selling a lot of mom and pop smaller places all kind of took a hit as well.
Oh yeah.
Kind of when Napster came out, and like it was like turmoil, you know what I mean? In 98, 99, 2000 and stuff, when I was like releasing projects, 2001.
Wow. So the timing was just
Yeah, my timing was bad. Like I had a whole stable full of artists, and we'd done a ton of albums, and I'd actually invested a ton of money into just building a studio and recording a lot of albums, and then like all this kind of stuff happened with music. You know what I mean? All right at that point, it's kind of
that's crazy.
Kind of a weird time,
It's like buying a bunch of houses at like in 2007 or something, right? Or
like
it's just unfortunate time. Like
same thing. I mean, and then I actually, had left the country in 2001, so I didn't get to release a lot of music. But
and really quickly, just for the audience, because I know you've talked about this in other interviews, but like let's just I guess establish this for the audience. Like, so you left the country, because
no, I'd left the country in 2001. Due to some like, legal issues there. I was like basically was on the run for like 8 years pretty much. But yeah, so that's kind of like right when I had left, it was like, so I wasn't able to release a bunch of projects that I want to release. So that being said, I am kind of getting ready to release a bunch of this old music. I mean, I've got like a vault of like basically old music that I'm going to release, like early Bay Area hip hop, a ton of unreleased tracks. San Quinn, shout out to San Quinn out of San Francisco, the Fillmore. He's a super dope artist, originally from the GLP, and super talented young brother from San Francisco. That is, also one of those people who doesn't really get his just due as far as artist goes. Real innovator, and really made a lot of waves in the industry and affected the independent music game, in a lot of ways. I got some music from Doobie, aka Sugar Wolf, who's from the Crest Side, who was kind of from Mac Dre's camp.
What year would you like, or roughly what years would you say like that music is kind of from? Because
like 97 to 2001 basically.
And then what were the strains that are popping off at those times? Like the genetics that are popping off?
I mean, that was like my record label was Champelli Entertainment. So I was kind of like, we were kind of like the early forebearers of like, I mean, I had Strain, I had the record label, and I was doing clothing, and we were doing music that was basically, a ton of artists were rapping about our, my Strain at that time.
Yeah, you got
So
Snoop, you got everyone. I mean, it's you got some of the biggest in the world. And sorry, I have like two things that pop in my mind which way I want to like. I was saying too, like maybe when you release this music, maybe we're like release some like throwback genetics from that era or something with
yeah,
it.
I mean, that's the idea, basically. I mean, I've got a ton of different, unreleased music. Once again, music from Doobie, Gonzo, even unreleased Mac Dre.
Damn,
Um,
that's yeah, wow.
yeah, so but yeah, basically, doing some capsules there with
Yeah,
some of this music. So yeah, make sure everybody stays tuned with that and
absolutely.
supports those projects, that'll be coming out.
Absolutely.
Definitely, it's part of the history, of the brand. You know what I mean? And I'm always been about music and independent music and supporting independent artists, whether it's music or just actual art. And Champelli is just one of those brands that's been just based in forged in just culture, basically, not just organically, whether it was music, clothing, cannabis, skateboarding, you name it. Like we've all, kind of like touched all those and been a part of all that kind of culture, early sort of stuff throughout the '90s,
A
and
lot of contributions, a lot of like you're like
yeah, it's like we were saying, just like everything is subtle. Everybody has their hand in some sort of contribution in the culture. If you're kind of consciously doing that, um,
well, this is like a perfect example. Like this is the other. So there's the two things I wanted to ask you. The other
and
thing I wanted
we're
to
kind
ask.
of like
My bad. So the other thing I wanted to ask you is like, kind of, do you think that like Burner could have not? I don't want to take anything from Burner. Like, do you think there is a Burner without kind of a Champelli? And not to say like that, but more so like you're kind of like one of the first people to take music, cannabis, like clothing, which is the three pillars really of what you know Burner did. And I don't want to frame it like that in that sense, but like I personally think that people like because you said you're doing that in the '90s, like
yeah.
way ahead of your time, or not ahead
Yeah,
of your time, but just like
yeah, what I mean, I was thinking at the time, how can we actually brand the weed more and make packaging? I never got around to it because everything was so illegal and we were just so under the radar and still, still trying to keep it cool, so to speak. And but shout out to Burner. A lot of respect for the guy. That's the homie right there. And I look up to him and what he's doing now. You know what I mean, as far as leading the way.
oh yeah,
And you know what I mean. And I'm all about giving him his flowers and what he's accomplished. You know what I mean. And he's a
100%,
big inspiration and paving the way for a lot of this industry to be taking its place right now, and what it is today.
100%.
Um, but and I mean to say there wouldn't have been a Burner, I mean
Yeah, I don't
that's
want to
hard.
say like that, but you know
Yeah,
what
I
I
mean,
mean. Yeah,
hard to say, but I mean, I don't want, also at the same time, I'm not gonna discount,
your contribution. Yeah,
people. Yeah, I'm not gonna even point to myself, but what I'll just say what other people did before. You know what I mean? Like I owe something to the generation and the people that came before me. You know what I mean? So I'm quick to go ahead and pay respect and homage to those people that came before me and paved the way. You know what I mean? I think
100%.
that's important. And you know what I mean? And wherever I can shed light and help out and you know what I mean, tell their stories, I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? Because that's just the way I think we keep this culture alive and keep it thriving. It's important to give people their flowers and just give credit where credit is due. Um,
Well, I want to give
so,
you your flowers too, bro, because you definitely, in
oh,
my
thank you.
opinion, yeah,
Appreciate
I
that.
think you really did build the step for like, and I think I don't know, Burner was like, I'm pretty sure you would. I mean, I think it's impossible to say that you didn't because, and not to say specific, like you and a couple of whatever, you're really one of the first to do it, right? So, but yeah, I think pay respects to the people that came before us because it's you know, like whether it's, you know, it's really anything in life. I mean, the trap is
Yeah, of course.
developed, you know. So
Yeah, you know what I mean? And I won't say it, but it's just, it is what it is. It's like, we had a unique movement, basically. If I wouldn't have had to leave the country, who knows how it would have turned out. I mean, I had the record labels getting ready to release 5, 6 different artists, and just had built a studio and was just getting it all. My ultimate vision back then was to create, basically some sort of powerhouse. At that point, I didn't know whether, as far as, people were talking about weed legalization back then. I used to actually do a deal with Dennis Perone, and he was a big, rest in peace, Dennis Perone, but he was actually, a big proponent and taking big steps in legalization at that time. And I used to go to his club and actually sell Dennis Perone weed. You know what I mean? I'd bring plants to his club and stuff like that. And so that's the super early 215 days or whatever, basically.
Timing is everything. Timing can, yeah.
So those are interesting times. And shout out to Dennis as far as his steps, and Steve D'Angelo's another person who was back then, who was around, and had to go through his share of legal issues and all types of stuff. And somebody who was still pushing for the culture, you know what I mean? And a lot of people are starting to push for the culture. Burners, is helping out in a lot of ways. And somebody out of the Bay Area, I'm super proud of the dude and what he's done and accomplished, and helping out with equity shops, and he's doing a lot of good work out there too. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
He's getting ready to actually, he's doing a collab with my good friend's father, Richard DeLisi, who just got out of prison after 32 years.
Yeah.
32 years for cannabis. And, Burns kind of taking it upon himself to help him out and give the man like a strain, and build him a little cannabis line and do a drop with him and stuff like that. And you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And so that's super dope. He's giving him his flowers, and really, that's super big.
And that $100 million fund too with the Cookies University. I have like people that like little homies that watch, not little homies, but like people, I literally have my homie that I think 18 years old. I don't know what 18 years old. He got in he's like he got in the program when he was like 9. I can't remember the exact. You know who you are. Is the homie out in Lake Tahoe. Just brilliant kid, really smart, really someone that's motivated. But he got into this program, and now he's doing this
that's dope.
He's gonna be able to get some funding.
Yeah, so I think it's important moving forward that people that are in position find ways to give back to communities and stuff like that, and make sure that to pave the way for future generations of people who are interested in being in the industry still, and especially like people that have been affected by the laws and stuff like that, giving them the opportunity if they want to be in the space somehow and stuff. You know what I mean? So that's super dope for people that are actually those sort of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's something that's really close to my heart is prison reform and social justice and social equity and stuff like that, and just lending my voice however I can help to try to further that cause. You know what I mean? And just being active in that space however I can. Just because it's something that's definitely close to my heart, is also just as being like a weed war veteran, so to speak, you know what I mean? And being affected by it myself, the war on drugs in a sense. It's something I'm close to my heart. So I'm definitely, however I'm able to help or push the conversation forward or whatever. It's something that I'm definitely going to do when I have more resources, and even when I don't, I'm going to try to find ways to try to help.
Oh yeah. Well,
Be involved wherever I can.
Absolutely, dude. I like, you're obviously a really wise dude, smart guy. That it kind of goes back to like, understanding, respecting the elders, respecting the sacrifices,
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
And a lot of kids, like a lot of kids my age, but like they don't understand some of those, you know what I mean? So, I definitely want to make sure people are very clear, like yeah, all types of
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like,
we're spoiled nowadays, like kids like us.
Yeah, I
When it
mean, it
comes to
is.
that.
It's a whole new type of generation and a whole new day. I mean, a lot of people have sacrificed to get, and this goes to be said with just life in general and the way we live life. We forget about like all the sacrifices people have made, before us to get to where we're at. So not only with cannabis, but just in general life, giving thanks and being aware of those sort of things, you know what I mean, is key. You know what I mean? We take a lot of stuff for granted, basically. I mean, how do we get to this place now with where it's a legal place? A lot of people went to jail. A lot of people suffered. A lot of families were broken up. A lot of stuff happened. A lot of people paid the price to get where we're at now. You know what I mean? As far as the cannabis industry goes. And yeah, so it's important. And it's not one of those things like just playing the victim or just like guilt tripping or anything like that. I just think it just should be just like
It's the
come
right thing to
naturally.
do.
Humans, it's the right thing to do. You know what I mean? Just being aware of it and you know, so forth there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd lost this light over here. Give me 1 second to just try to turn on this light
Yeah,
real
no,
quick.
no worries. No worries. 100%. I'm gonna okay. So this is kind of one of the more like kind of last kind of kind of things I want, like aspects I want to tackle. Not to say that ending it if there's other stuff as well. I think there might be some other stuff, but I want to talk about the flavors. I want to talk about genetics. I'm just fascinated with what makes, because first of all, like, the first cannabis brands ever were the strains. They were like like they were the unprotected, brands. They had, anybody could take the name and the name gets stomped on over the years because it gets abused, and that's just, then they move on to the next one. But like, I'm just fascinated with like the overall, like what makes a strain pop off, like like why are we in the runts era right now? Like why were, you know what I mean, like why was there the Champelli era? Like I guess start with that. Like what do you think really led to the Champelli era? Because that's 100% an era.
Yeah, that's a good question there, honestly. And like that's like one of those cultural phenomena things, like what sparks off any sort of little cultural phenomenon like that, where it's like a hit song or an era or a style or a trend or fashion or anything like that. It's I got to see a lot of strains come and go, from like the early days of, I literally started like being like heavily involved in like cannabis, like when I was like really more aware of it, basically when I was like 12 years old. Basically I started really being kind of involved. Like when I first grew my first plants and everything was like in the late 80s. And there was names back then and different growers and different strains, and kind of just seeing all these different strains kind of come and go over the years, and different kind of little hypes built, around certain strains. And a lot of it is like built on, the essence of that plant, you know what I mean? And those terpene profiles and the uniqueness
And then
of
the
that.
breeder who kind of interprets that, right? Like, because
the culture, the circle, and the people who were involved, like, when you had the super killer weed, like everybody would like search you out and like hound you to try to get some weed, basically. You know what I mean? If you got the super, like if you took all the weed away right now in in the United States, and all there was a Runts or cookies or a Champelli or whatever, you know what I mean, a Skittles, like one of those things, like people would be just like banging down your door to try to get this stuff. You know what I mean? And a lot of it is like, it's like not the same with like boof weed or a certain weed that doesn't excite you. A lot of it has to come down to like the excitement of the weed. It sparks a certain essence and actually has a certain type of magic and excitement to it. Like it gets you high, it gives you a certain type of energy. It has different components to it that, each strain kind of gives you, I mean, this is just one aspect of what fuels it. And a lot of it comes down to like being some fire ass weed, you know what I mean? Like the Kush has had such a long haul and a long, run and influence basically all of the strains today as where we're at right now, as far as potency goes and flavor and all this stuff. It's like almost 90% of like what's out there basically has Kush in it. And that kind of goes unmentioned, and people don't really talk about it, but Kush is kind of one of the secret ingredients that kind of reinfused power into a lot of these strains and help fuel a lot of these brands
modern day
and
kind of
right, because Kush is actually, there was a point when a lot of good strains and weed like disappeared, you know what I mean, honestly.
What do you mean disappear? Like were they like, because
just from the transition from the 80s to the 90s and thereon, like a lot of stuff, since stuff was so underground and not a lot of stuff was like preserved, it was so illegal, nobody was like there wasn't as many people weren't cloning and maintaining clones and seeding and genetic. I mean, people were, but just on such a small scale and so temporarily, not like now where it's like an ongoing effort to keep stuff alive. Back then, people didn't have the foresight to like try to keep shit alive for years and years. There was some OGs that did that and like, why are this strain for fucking 10 years? But it's like, they're like dead and gone, and other people,
and then other people manipulate that, and they're like, "Oh, I got these strains from this OG," and then so this is, I guess, my question now is like, you're talking a lot about like the true biology of it, like the true like the effects of it. Do you think that still matters as much now? And then like there's the other component of like the brand side now, where now because it's so it's not as like it's accessible, it's not so suppressed by it being super illegal. Now you have kind of the opposite of like, fake packaging, right? Where like people are now the packaging is the brand because really
until the consumer gets educated basically and people's palates evolve. Initially it's, just to use this as an example, it's like for a while, like people were smoking hot dog water out of vapor carts, and now they want sauce carts or live rosin, or, what I mean? People's palates evolve. They start off smoking Mexican, back in the day, there used to be Bammer weed, straight Mexican with seeds and sticks, and you know what I mean? And now it's evolved, and I mean, there used to be good weed too, but I'm just saying, like, people used to smoke that, like, a ton. Now, like, people won't touch it. And it's just like people's palates evolve and the culture evolves. So people like eventually get hip and want to try something new, or they try something new and they're like, damn, after that, they can't go back to another product. You know what I mean? So it's going to take some time, but eventually what's going to happen, and to give you some insight, is like my overview of what's kind of really happening is like it's coming to a head as far as like there's so much scale happening right now in the industry, people scaling up, and so much shitty weed being grown that it's going to come to a head here. And anyway, it's going to, there's vast amounts of just new consumers and people who don't care, who want cheap weed, and it's going to all get eaten up and sold to an extent. But it's going to be such a glut, which is already happening in the market, of just shittier weed. Eventually people are going to, want to try new flavors, get tired of shitty weed, want better weed, willing to spend a little more, discover some new flavors. And this is only going to be a percentage of people. Obviously, there's people who are going to smoke shitty weed and not care forever,
Yeah.
also just because of their budget, or they don't want to get so high, or just they enjoy it or whatever. But eventually, the market is going to, there's a lot of people, there's going to be a lot of companies failing and a lot of people not going to make it. And a lot of that will be based on genetics and how well you're growing your weed. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah. Well, and I think what's, I think you're right. And then I think though, like, let's now like just talk about the upper echelons of quality and like it's all good weed. Now I think this is where genetics is kind of, I guess where I kind of mean is like the kind of not new school, but like if it's all high quality, if it's all really like, let's say, the top shelf, light depths and, or, whatever, it's all top shelf, right? Now, like from that point, that's where I see, people starting to, they put some good weed and they're calling, maybe it's some, maybe it's a gelato, like a, gelato 41 or whatever, but now they're calling it like the run, pink run, you know what I mean? So they're high.
Yeah. What's going to eventually have to happen here is eventually the playing field will even out. Everybody's going to start to have to grow better weed if they want to survive as a company and as a brand eventually, down the line. Not everybody, but a lot of people are going to evolve. They're going to get better genetics.
People are going to come for like the company, the brand, rather than the strain.
So now, so getting around to that, you kind of got beat me to the point there, is eventually it will be about your brand story a lot, and people, will this brand really resonate with you? You know what I mean? And is this somebody I believe in, or is this, is this my tribe, or, something I can relate to, or, you know what I mean? Like, what does this person stand for? What is this person in it for? Is this a brand that I believe in or want to support? And people will start taking a closer look at that once, say, the playing field is evened out, everybody's growing good weed. Then it also becomes a genetics thing and also a brand thing.
Equity, brand equity,
a brand thing, and and that's kind of like where people will take notice eventually, because it's going to be like, there's the brands out there where it's like 10 white guys came together and made a corporation and came up with like some kind of, it doesn't have to be white guys, I'm just saying,
10 squares that
10 guys come together and come up and let's call it the fucking whatever, this and that, and
the green, yeah, dude, some of that,
you know what I mean? And then there's 1,000,001 of those out there right now, you know what I mean? And I hate to say it, but there's going to come a point where, and I'm not wishing anybody's downfall, but it's gonna. There's so much of that. It's like, how are you gonna define yourself as a brand, and who are you? Who are you really? You know what I mean? What
100%. Well, it's like, how are people gonna identify with it? Like,
what's your actual story? You know what I mean? Is there an actual story, and people that actually have a story? I think, and maybe a person who you could point to, such as like a Burner or something like that, are going to, and obviously stand out or fare a little better, you know what I mean, than others.
Or a Champelli, like that, like I think, because I've another interviews you've talked about the importance of brand, and you like, just that long game, and I think the best is yet to come for you, dude.
Not to give up all my strategy and where I'm going with it, but eventually, we're, as a brand, like, I mean, I'm really, heavily invested and immersed in, the culture of my brand and what it represents and what I want to eventually carve it out to stand for, and and also where it's come from and everything. And I'm just getting ready to kind of telegraph that message to consumer and the people and everything. And and shaping that and how people view your brand and your story and everything. And that's kind of like what, and it's not a, you know, something that's a fabricated thing. It's something that's actually coming from my heart and
From the culture.
the
It's
culture itself, you know what I mean? And it's like, I didn't give myself, you know, the name. It's like the streets gave me the
culture.
name.
That's fire.
You know
Like,
what I mean? And
yeah.
so it's like, I'm just, I don't, you know, I'm not, you know, I don't even have to try too hard. It just comes naturally because it's something I've been living and breathing for, you know, I've been, you know, 35 years in the weed game, basically, so to speak, you know, and seeing so much stuff, ups and downs and all arounds and everything, you know what I mean? So I'm just, you know, like you say, playing the long game and just working towards doing what's in my heart and what I believe in and trying to just really, you know, make change ultimately. Because if I had all the money in the world, like, what would I do? I'd ultimately want to affect change and make make a positive impact on this world and life and even this industry and this culture. You know what I mean? So that's ultimately what I'm about and I want my brand to stand for and who I want to attract to the brand. Like not everybody's got to smoke the best weed or be, you know, aligned with my message. But I mean, ultimately I do have a certain, brand message and culture that I'm going to want to translate in for people to identify with, you know what I mean, and attract. You know
Well, I think people already do. I mean, you know, I think because I tons of like, you know, I have like homies in New York. Like I know tons of people have mentioned you, dude. I mean, like you definitely like I know for a fact, and this is kind of goes back to the brand and like the whole idea of consumerism. Like what we buy is what we're showing to the rest of the world, what we identify with. Like I know for a fact, like I want to hold up a Champelli bag, or I want to be wearing a Champelli shirt, or I want to be smoking some Champelli, some Champelli weed, or I want to be listening to some Champelli music, you know, personally. And I think a lot of people can would attest to that. Now, are they going to want to, you know, be like, yo, what's popping? I got the True Leaf pack, I got the Canopy Growth pack. The brand, like right there, dude. It's like I've kind of like boiled it
well,
down.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, literally, dude. Because because it's like I want to be repping your like that's why clothing is so I think powerful. Is like, you know, it's much harder to like be like, you know, constantly be like, yo, I got the cookies pack, I got the Pelly pack, like to saying to everyone the rest of the world, right? But clothing is something that everyone sees all the time. So you're, you know, always getting that message out, right? That's why I got, you know, the Gucci belt. You're trying to tell the world, oh, I'm rich as fuck, or blah blah, right? Like, you know, I got the cookies, you know, I got the cookie sweat, like that, and I think, you know, the Champelli clothing, you know what I mean? Like, I think, you know, yeah, I've learned so much about brand just through cannabis, just through like the
Yeah.
last years of just studying this, like everything.
That being said, like coming back around to the clothing, you know, it's something that I'm passionate about is, you know, creating and, you know, expressing myself artistically. And one of the ways that I enjoy doing it is through clothing and designing my own clothes. And, you know, lately initially it's kind of been just the staple things like t-shirts and sweatshirts and things like that, that we've been putting out there. But behind the scenes, I've been working on actual cut and sew pieces that I believe in and want to wear and stuff like that. So for example, like, I got, you know, actually the jacket I'm wearing is a jacket that I
Fire
designed.
as fuck, dude.
You know, in the whole aesthetic, just even the logo and everything, it's like I had a hand in everything. And even the fabric we're using is all upcycled, from a warehouse. The original people that put this jacket together and sewed the jacket, they used to do North Face before they really took off. They used to sew all of North Face stuff, and North Face went off and started producing in other places. But this is actually a company here based in the United States, and I was actually blessed enough to be able to source all the fabric from them that they had still in their storage. So it's all upcycled fabric. So it's actually, you know, very green and sustainable in a sense. We're using fabric that exists still and we're putting it back to use. And it's new fabric, but we're not, we're basically recycling in a sense, instead of it going to waste and just sitting, we're using that. So everything is very retro, from the fabric to the zipper to everything, you know what I
It's
mean?
high quality too, and
Yeah, high quality, and just trying to find a made in the United States, and every piece is one of a kind, and just trying to find a way to make pieces that are unique, and also just try to move towards more sustainability. You know what I mean? As far as, and I'm not going to be able to do that every time on everything, but wherever I can find a way to like reduce, the company's footprint or our footprint as humans here, because it's like the clothing is like a big draw. Clothing is a huge draw on our environment, and just trying to find more ways to be, conscientious of that, whether it's in our clothing or eventually moving towards, sustainable packaging that is, actually, biodegradable, all things that we want to try to move towards as a company, at least personally, you know what I mean? Just because of my own just beliefs and where I think, we should take it, but yeah, the clothing is like, I'm super passionate about it. I'm actually getting ready to do, just kind of preparing a few more things, but we're going to get ready to do a drop of 4 different jackets of 4 different colorways coming up, and just in more frequent stuff, just having more frequency to the clothing. And it's something that I'm super passionate about. And like you said, something I want people to identify with Champelli as a brand and as an aspect of the brand is like clothing. And it's been something that's been integral to the brand since day one, and something I'm super passionate about. Always been kind of fashion minded, and just I just want to kind of make pieces that are like, your favorite piece that you want to wear every day.
absolutely, dude.
My goal. Something you're like, damn, I always want to reach towards that one jacket when I go out. That's like the jacket I want to put on. It's the most comfortable, the most swaggiest. That's like the one where I'm like, damn, I always find myself. So I want to make, those favorite pieces, because I struggle when I go out to shop and everything. Like, there's a lot of garbage and just shitty stuff out there. You know what I mean? Not everybody has the eye or the aesthetic to make dope shit. So I want to make stuff that people are drawn towards and are like, damn, I really, can identify with the design.
Your design, by the way, and I know like all today, I was like, for people listening, I literally text this guy probably like 3 or 4 different times throughout the day, just looking at like, bro, you're aesthetic, you're a bit like, because I think personally your aesthetic of the brand and just the different concepts you've done, like it's my favorite out of anyone in the industry. And like we're talking like at this point now, if you include the illegal market, like so many people have taken cracks at this right now, and there's so much like, but just in terms of just the overall just high quality clean, it's I love your aesthetics, your design. It's super.
I appreciate that, my brother. That means a lot. That means a lot to me coming from you. You know what I mean? And I really appreciate that. I hope we can kind of keep that up and keep delivering on that front. And I have to just like, I think I owe a lot of that to just, my Bay Area upbringing, and then my father being an artist and kind of just picking up just aesthetics and, and then having kind of honing your eye. And like, you can literally, just for people that want to, or doing any of this sort of thing themselves, like you can just train your eye and hone your eye. It's dope stuff, you know what I mean? And a lot of it, it's like, I work with a few designers that, like, if I turn them loose and said, hey, go make this logo or do this, like, it's not going to come back the way that I want it to come back if I just turned them loose and just was like, yeah, make something, you know what I mean? It's like I have to be like integrally involved, and I've kind of always been that way as far as hands-on goes, like whether it's the music,
executive
like
producing.
I start to notice like my involvement, you know what I mean, affects the outcome. You know what I mean? It's like, whether I'm making a song, I'm in the studio and I'm working with the artist as a producer, it's going to turn out a certain way. Whether it's open to interpretation, but from my own perspective, you know what I mean? Like, I'm very like hit orientated. Like I want it to be a hit. I want it to be like something that's dope. You know what I mean? Whether it's clothing, whether it's some fire ass weed, like, I'm going to use my old school palate and draw back on all my old school knowledge of strains and flavors that I've tasted to be like, damn, reminds me of some old school stuff that was excited me or whatever, and comes back to like driving the essence of a brand and the essence of what gets people excited in culture, whether it's music or fashion or cannabis, is like being on the pulse and being in touch with that and sensitive to those kind of things, I guess, in so many ways, to put it in, into words there kind of. So
Absolutely.
like definitely just like, if like, just once again, I turn somebody loose and tell them, hey, come back with a logo. It's not gonna, I really have to be there and like almost like hand guide people to get the results that I want, you know what I mean? So like, I'm very involved like with the aesthetics and the designs, and just kind of like hands on to get what I want. And and it's like, even if like, I've also like directed a lot of videos in the past and stuff like that. And if it's like, if I direct and shoot a video and I give it to an editor, I'm not going to get the same result if like I edited it myself. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, I've tried it a few times, like, but there are people who do get your aesthetic as far as creatively in a brand, and finding people and attracting people like that have your same vision or your same eye and your own, your thing like that. And there are
valuable,
people,
dude. Yeah, those finding those kind of,
that's the goal as you build as a brand, is to attract more like-minded people that can build with you and have the same vision and see your vision. And because it's like, ultimately, I can't do it all by myself. Eventually I have to learn to let go and let other people help, and, and start to be more interdependent and, and delegate, you know what I mean? So I'm, as far as like, trying to grow as a brand and stuff like that, trying to attract more talented people that
share that vision, but it's so hard to find,
share the vision and be on point to where you can turn them loose and they're going to come back with some shit that's going to surprise you and be doper, and you're going to be like, damn, okay, that just went up to my level of what I would have even done, you know what I mean? And that's the shit that excites me. If I go to a restaurant, like, I love to cook too, I'm passionate about food. And if I go to a restaurant and I'm like, damn, I couldn't cook that at home, like, how did he make that? And that gets me thinking, and I'm like trying to dissect the flavors and stuff like that. Like, that's like, what I like when, either whether it's in food or in clothing or in music, I'm like trying to dissect the beat, or I'm trying to dissect a strain, or like, or look at some clothing stuff and be inspired or whatever it is, it's like, that's how life is, or a meal, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like just having that mind that works that way, you know what I mean, in a sense, and you can kind of apply that formula to anything that you're involved in and that you're passionate about, essentially, you know what I mean? Like getting involved and really hands-on in the art and what you're really, what you're passionate about. And
absolutely, dude, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that was beautiful, like beautifully said too, because it's like, I started doing like video work like 2 years ago maybe, and just like, just the more you do it, it's obviously just the more and if you're kind of that, that personality, kind of build it continuously, build, and I can tell you're heavily involved, and it's super impressive, dude. Like, I aspire personally one day, to get to that point, where because I'm still working on a lot of different things from myself, where it's a little messy on some parts, but
man, it's all about the process, and and trusting that process and just working through it. And everything is like, don't be afraid to learn, you know what I mean? Don't be afraid to try things, is what I find too, and don't be afraid to like put it out there and just grow, you know what I mean? So it's like, I'm like trying to grow and learn, and I mean, sometimes I'll overanalyze stuff, and it's like, you got to just trust the process and go in and express yourself and put that stuff out there. You know what I mean?
Don't be afraid, like, don't be afraid to look stupid. Don't be afraid, like, that's my biggest benefit. I'm not the smartest person at whatsoever. I'm not particularly, exceptional, in really, but I'm not afraid to look stupid. And but I'm not trying to make mistakes multiple times, same mistake. But my whole mentality is like, the higher volume of different mistakes I make, and I'm not trying, hopefully I'm not repeating those. That's just literally me learning, right? That's literally like me proving.
That's part of the learning process, you know what I mean? And it's like interesting. I look at, I kind of like have, being in that kind of like quote unquote counterculture. All my focus has been in like, you know, over the years has been in like learning about cannabis and the plant in a way, you know what I mean? For so many years. And like, I've been prepared to this point. I've been like almost just like a soldier of the game to where it's like, I've just like been in the
Culture
trenches
molded you, dog.
all the way to come up to this point, you know what I mean? To try to like do my thing in a sense, you know what I mean? It's like a, you know, it's been like a mythological sort of journey of like, you know, having to go through the valleys of darkness and to come up to the light here and conquer the, you know, slay the dragon or whatever. In a sense, I have to, you know, but it's like I've acquired all these skills, whether it was like, you know, my early days of, you know, photography, you know, in high school and before that, like I've always been attracted to photography and honing my eye that way, or video stuff, or just like clothing things, and then, you know, cannabis and cultivation and you know, just all the aspects of the business, and then like doing that for so many years and just creating all these layers of yourself and building it, you know, and then you kind of like you get to a point, you know,
refined, dude, like
all these different understandings and different levels of experience, you know, it's a trip.
100%. Let me ask, can I ask you a question? Would you potentially be down to do a really limited edition little collab on a design for some clothing for high design for my so my concept, and I'm curious. So for my volume 2 kind of collection for high design, I'm gonna have like 20 different collabs with different companies. And just like really limited supply, like, you know, just like a 50 piece of like this, and then just keep it at that with, you know, this company, and that's just isolated to that collection. So
yeah, that's a great idea, man, and I support you, you know, however I can in your endeavors, man. I'm inspired by your, you know, drive and what you're creating there too, you know what I mean? And the creators got to stick together in a way, you know what I mean? And I'm in full support. So however I can help, I'm down, you know.
yeah, I'll talk to you. Yeah, I'll talk to you around in the future.
Yeah. Come up with some stuff for sure. That would be dope.
Absolutely, I'd be honored, dude. That'd be amazing, dude.
Sure.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and you know, I think I just can kind of conclude this, man. I just want to say thank you, first of all, just for your contribution. You know, dude, like you really have, you know, especially just talk, you know, just from seeing it, but like just talking to you now, like you really have contributed a lot to this culture. And I know you're a humble ass dude, and you're but like, dude, you've contributed massive amounts, and we should all give you, you know, your flowers, you know, because you know, dude, there's not, you know, you're OG that like really was fucking so far ahead of your time, dude. Like when it comes to the like almost to a fault, right? Like you were so ahead of your time, and the timing wise, right? Like this, the like, but like, you know, people observe that, you know, people, you know, and who know, like.
And you know, I could just only hope to kind of like be an inspiration to people, and I'm trying to inspire myself and be inspired by others, and just keep learning and growing. And you know, and I feel just blessed to be able to be here to like do what I'm doing still, you know what I mean? And so many others that are just not here with us now, and I feel like I gotta do it for the Bay, do it for Mac Dre, you know what I mean?
Do it for
And
dude,
all
that's
the
great,
others, the Chaka, you know what I mean?
yeah, RIP.
Badass Bonzo. And these are just people who are all, you know, people that, you know, we would know and who are super talented folks. And then there's so many unnamed people who are, you know, also, you know, interesting, beautiful souls that had a story that we got to do it for too. You know what I mean? We always focus on the star, you know, the stars. And of course, you know, you know, I mean, I'm all for that, but I also like even the unsung heroes too. You know what I mean? We got to do it for them, and just all the people that maybe, you know, that are alive too, you know what I mean? We all got to like, you know, do our thing basically, you know what I mean? And try to live to our fullest potential. And man, I appreciate everything that you said, you know what I mean? And it's much love. And yeah, I just want to, I'm motivated by people like yourself and just the community itself. And I want to be able to give back and inspire others, and hopefully through my own journey and everything, you know what I mean? And I'm still trying to learn and make it out here myself too, just like everybody else. So, I'm just, trying to do it, I mean, just like everyone else out here right now,
Well,
and,
dude, it's I think that's kind of a big component to you, why like your longevity in a sense is you realize you don't stop learning until the day you die, like that anybody
yeah,
that's really into it does
1000%,
that.
yeah.
You're constantly improving, just because that yeah, just being open to learning, and especially the older you get, people, a lot of people don't have that ability. What's
Well,
impressive.
yeah, that's like, that's honestly one of the secrets, you know what I mean? I feel like, and I'm sure a lot of like Zen teachers would like, basically, spread that same message or not. But it would be like, you got to be able to learn from everybody and be open to it and not be rigid or stuck in your own, part of my, philosophy basically is to just, in a sense, move like water and be able to be fluid and accept other people's, perspectives and see things from other ways and be able to move, accordingly and don't be rigid or so stuck in certain thoughts. Because nowadays, honestly, there's so many different ways to look at things and approach things, and it's like you never really know. So as soon as you claim that you know anything, it's like you
You
don't
know
really know.
nothing. You know nothing. Yeah, it's
You know what I
everything.
mean? So, and that's like super true. And then, and also, you know what I mean? Is like now we're bombarded with so much shit from so many different angles. You know what I mean? Five different. You have to really,
It's
you
hard
really
to
have
sift
to.
through it now. We have to really
You
sift
have to,
through it.
you have to, get in touch with 5 or 6 different things and really dig into them before you can really form your own opinion, or really just have that knowing inside, like that neutral knowing, not just some bias knowing
No, yeah,
that you maybe
like
have. You know what I
uh,
mean? Yeah, like your gut, you know what I mean, what your heart really tells you, and not just like what your ego is telling you or what the media is telling you or what, your friends are telling you. You got to really, be able to not afraid to form your own opinion and stand up for others that don't have a voice, you know what I mean? And yeah, just be really aware and question everything, you know what I mean? Pretty much.
absolutely, dude.
And like question everything that you believe, you know what I mean? Like think it over
Yes,
10 different
yes,
ways,
absolutely.
thinking from other people's perspectives, you know what I mean? Because,
I think our
more and
politics
more,
could
like
use
this,
that. Hmm.
yeah, there's no critical thinking now, and everybody just kind of goes along, and this is like, I'm kind of more of an anarchist, honestly. So I'm not, picking any side. I just try to pick the neutral middle ground road in a sense. And, and not like, and when I say anarchist, I don't mean even like in this modern day sense. I mean more of just like I'm in a neutral space and I take things as they come and make my decision as they go. So it's like
Absolutely.
I'm not really,
You're not
I'm
letting
not picking
biases,
sides.
yeah, blind you. Like you're not letting
Yeah,
like fit in,
yeah,
yeah, 100%.
exactly. You know what I mean? So that's just as another just, thing I would like to just, pass along to people, because everybody's like now everything is just so, team based and divided and everything like that. You know what I mean? And I feel like we're just so influenced by all this stuff outside of us, and we don't even really know what we're supposed to feel or think on the or we're not listening enough closely to ourselves. You know what I mean? We're just kind of going along with, fear of what people might think if we disagree or, or whatever. So it's important to be in touch and stand up and make sure you just listen a little closer and, question stuff, don't stop questioning everything, even things you believe in, you know what I mean? So that's
Absolutely,
pretty much
man.
just my
Couldn't have
little
said it better.
sense there, you know what I mean?
Dude, no, literally, bro. Like some of like some of the wisest words I've heard in quite some time. Like, and it's in today's era, like you said, dude, we need that so badly. We need
Mm-hmm.
to, for example, like we need to, if you're in a political party, we need to criticize our own. We need to criticize ourselves, like take accountability and but it's people's, whether it's competition or just a pure hatred for another side or they let those things blind, people just get blinded by it, and it's so evident. Like if you're trying
Yeah,
to tell somebody something and you could literally show them like physical, like
yeah,
this is actually happening in front of you, and they would tell you no,
yeah,
like because
yeah, and it's, yeah, just not allowing yourself to get blinded. And it's like, and it's just a tool that's being used more and more now. Is the divide and conquer.
Oh, dividing, because the rich do that. We need to be class. Why the culture war? Like I'm a political junkie, dude. And like I've been seeing this for a while now, dude. Like literally, dude, the culture wars are used by the rich completely, because once we stop hating our brothers and sisters on this level, and we start to really like, hey, we can get along. We can, we may disagree, but we can get along. Like let's do what we can do, what we agree on. Then we start to look upwards, and we're seeing that donor class. We're seeing, the aristocracy that have been completely, doing that. That's why, at the end of the day, like people of color have absolutely been disproportionately affected by the war on drugs, 100%. But it also low income communities really, also, in general too. So, yeah, so it's a class thing really, dude, and we're hitting a waypoint just with the pendulum's supposed to swing back and forth, and the fact that we've let now the corporations run the show. Like our politicians don't run the show. They're the bitches and lapdogs of the corporations. They do what they do. They should be technically our bitches and lapdogs, not to say it like that, but they should be listening to us, the people. And now that pendulum's stuck there, and that pressure cooker is boiling up, and hopefully it doesn't, turn into a explosion of a revolution. But I don't know. Anyway, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But
whole other thing.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, I just wanted to say, dude, thank you again. Love to have you back on. We're gonna be doing some high design content for anybody that's interested. We're gonna be definitely doing some more content in the future, and so. But I just wanted to say, thank you.
My brother, for sure, man. I appreciate you for sure for having me on and sharing your platform with me. You know what I mean, and everything that you're doing for the culture. You know what I mean, and helping keep the culture alive and spreading the word, and doing your part and everything is super dope. I've been following what you've been doing for a while and seeing the movement, and it's all super dope and super creative, and I'm all about it, man. So however I can help, whatever, and definitely we're going to keep building, on a few different levels, and for sure, man.
Well, dude, that means the world. That means a lot, coming from you. So I do really appreciate that. And people like you, dude, you inspire the hell out of me. So I think. Yeah, dude, it's all a lot. You can learn from everything, like you said, and anyway. But yeah, dude, really, really great conversation. It is a little 1:30 a.m. But man, I definitely want to have you back on soon. In the near future. Whenever you want to use my platform, you just hit me up.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, dude.
For sure.
Of course, dude. I gotta pay respect to the OGs. And you're an OG for me personally, and absolutely, bro. Anyways, guys, keep going.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, we'll definitely have to tap in. I'm looking to, like really do another big push with the brand here coming up. So we'll definitely,
I want to talk to you about something after this recording, but anyways, I want to just say everyone that's watched it all the way through, really appreciate you guys for making it through. Hope you guys learned something, or hope we added some value, and I know I learned a ton because Pelly was absolutely dropping truth bombs, a lot of wisdom I heard. So, but guys, this is the Frame of Flower podcast, a high design show. Thank you again, Pelly. Much love.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you, everybody else out there too for sticking through this one. You know what I mean? If you made it to the end, like you said.
Hell yeah. I think there's some. I think we're under. I think there's some. I think there's some absolute fire in this podcast. But anyways, guys, this is episode 48. The Frame of Flower, high design, Champelli. Yeet.